Okay.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'm Lainey Denslow, a member of the Global Tribe in San Francisco. And it is a pleasure to welcome all of you. We have with us Gloria Peterson, who is the mind behind this series. She's the one who had the idea and has corralled all of us in the direction of creating the second part of our Global Author series. And this morning we are fortunate to hear from Zach Selch and Michael Quigley, and I'm going to ask them in a minute to introduce themselves. But we have a couple of people I haven't met. So Erica, would you introduce yourself?
I'm sorry. Hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I'm in the car, so I don't have video. I'll join in a minute. But I'm Erica with Global Chamber. I'm with the Scottsdale group, but I live in Washington, and I am a investment property consultant with people nationally and internationally. So I consult on hotels and multifamily and things of that nature with everybody all over.
Great. And I assume you have some ideas about writing a book, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit later. And I saw a note that says Dwaine's in the waiting room. So
yeah, he emailed me. I think he said he's in the email in the waiting room.
All right. So I'm sure that Cesar will figure out to let him in. But meanwhile, Werner, could you introduce yourself? I don't think we've met.
Yeah, no, I screwed up last week, so here I am.
We forgive you.
Yeah, I'm in Munich. I am a kind of a serial founder. I deal with corporate venture capital funds, and I work with a couple of incubators in Abu Dhabi and Berlin. So I spend about a week a month in Abu Dhabi, most of the rest of the time here in Munich. And yeah, that's about it.
Okay, so obviously you share our interest in books and writing them, so we'll come back to that. And
Yeah.
Phil, could you introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Phil Tisson. I'm the Executive Director of Global Chamber, Joinville, Southern Brazil. So I'm very, very happy to be joining today and hear about what we're gonna learn for writing and maybe tips. And so that's something which is interesting for me. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Good, and we're very happy that you're here. And here is Dwaine connecting. He is our moderator for the day. Glad we solved the technical difficulties. I'm going to turn the baton back over to you.
Oh gosh, Lainey, thank you so much. Yeah, sorry here. I just did not, for some reason, have the correct link. And but fortunately, as always, Cesar fixes that as quickly as he knows there's a problem. So anyway, thank you all. Well, welcome. We're going to have fun this morning. So we're here to talk about starting and writing a book. And of course, if you're just having the idea or you're writing a book or whatever, thought it'd be good to have a session here and have us share with one another, hear what other, from some authors, hear what they have to say, and you could ask questions. So our two authors for today that we're going to be chatting with here, I'm just going to read a little bit about each one. First of all is Zach Selch, which you can see on the screen there. And Zach is author of Global Sales. He's the VP of Global Sales for a high-tech medical company, and he coaches and mentors global sales leaders all over the world. He's been doing this for 30 years in 135 countries. He's lived in 6 countries, and he's driven 4-digit sales growth multiple times. And Zach has really established an international footprint. He's also an ex-paratrooper, a father of 3, and he boxes, he smokes brisket, so he knows how to eat, and he runs a soup kitchen when he isn't on the road. And so Zach was in Germany when the wall went down. He was in Jordan when peace with Israel was signed. He has breakfasted with the Dalai Lama. and has been in the right place for a surprising number of right times. So we have our very own Indiana Jones with us here this morning, and so it'll be fun to hear his story. And of course, Zach is in Chicago, which is one of the really enjoyable cities here in the US. And we have Michael Quigley with us, and Michael is in the UK, and he's the owner at a company called Kataholos, and he's a former primary school teacher with more than 10 years of extensive experience teaching, coaching, leading team members, and coupling this with a lifelong passion for the interest in others in fitness and well-being. And he's a published author, a regular blogger, and he has extensive experience in public speaking, delivering both in the public and private sector. One of his favorite training deliveries was for Russell Bedford International, and their managers and young partners conference in Malta. Gosh, I would love to go to Malta. So I'll have to hear more stories about that. Anyway, we have our authors here today. I'm the moderator. I've written a few books myself, but we want to hear from everyone else. And so let's just kind of begin here. Just the topics are how to gather and organize information. How do you establish length of the book, chapters, photos, other issues, kind of getting the structure in mind. How do you stay motivated through the process? How do you stay creative in the process so that it isn't full for you? And sort of breaking through the writer's block. So those are the topics for today that we'll chat about. And of course, it's going to be Q&A, interactive. But Michael, why don't we begin with you and just have you kind of share your thoughts about these 5 points in our agenda for today. And by the way, let me interrupt again here. Welcome. Here we are in another marvelous global event, and this community just keeps growing and developing. It's wonderful to be here. So,
hey, Dwaine.
Yes.
This is Doug. Could everybody mute their mic if they're not speaking? And I think Dana, you're the chief offender at this point, but please make sure that we can hear the speaker. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Okay, Michael.
Sure. Yes.
Start your process here, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dwaine. Brilliant. Hello, everybody. So I've really been thinking about how me and Zach can help you as best we can. So I think it's very important that you understand me and Zach have probably some completely different experiences, which is great for you as writers. You know, I would try and be a little bit selfish today and think, how can these guys help me? Because it's not about us, is it? It's about how we can help you. So for me personally, what I'd suggest is all the information you get today, I would distinguish it into 3 categories. Is this, Michael's experience with his writing? Is this Zach's experience? Or is this general, just good professional, good practice that you can employ? Because I think that's really helpful. Sometimes we try and be like other people. You don't need to do that, So you sat there thinking, he's done it that way, I do it this way. Or, yeah, I do that as well. Or, oh, that's a really good one. So I think that might be a good distinction to just start the ball rolling. Very briefly, I don't want to go into all 5 points. Maybe I'll just take the first one and pass it to Zach and see what he thinks about this. In relation to gathering and organizing information, I'd start simple and just say, pick your capturing device. Is it a digital one or is it an analog one? Are you a pen and paper type person? Do you like to have that physical touch? Or do you like to write on a digital device? It's a yes or no question, really, isn't it? You go one way or the other. But I'd just start by saying, right, I'm going to do it in a journal, or I'm going to do it in a folder, or for me, I actually write on my phone. Sounds silly now, but it's just there with me all the time. And then I might move that from the phone onto the laptop. So for me, it's a digital thing, which it sounds bizarre, but it just really suits me, So that's the first distinction I think I'd suggest you make. Do you want to do it old school and go analog, or would you want to do digital, or would it be a combination of both? And then when it comes into organizing it, I think I'll pass over to Zach, really, because I think I've said enough to kind of, hear me talking for a bit. So Zach, over to you in relation to that point, and anything else you want to add, please.
So I think we both, I believe from our talk the other day, I think we both sort of wrote things that we know about and worked from our own knowledge. And certainly with me, it was more, I had a very solid idea of what I wanted to talk about. I had taught about this type of thing before. I wrote a book about global sales, which is what I've been doing my whole life. And so what I did was I started off by essentially writing down all the various chapters and sub-chapters I wanted to talk about, and I made a list of that. And I used a dictating software. So what I did was I actually, every day when I walked the dog, I do a 2-hour walk every morning with my dog, and I would walk and I would dictate as I walked the dog. I would say, I put in my calendar every day a different chapter. And every day I did a whole chapter of the book while walking my dog. And then I essentially had it transcribed and edit, and then I had to edit it. The problem with doing it this way was the editing was a real monster. But what was probably the funniest part of it was the book, the first edit, the book was full of hello, good morning, because as I was walking my dog around and I saw people I know, I would say good morning, and it went right into the book. And so I had to go over and over and over again, peeling out the good mornings from the book. But that's how I did it essentially. And then at the end of that, I sat down and I thought, okay, what did I miss? And I did a little bit of writing at a desk, but 95% of the book I did dictating. And back to you, Michael.
Cool, thank you.
Or back to you,
Dwaine.
Dwaine.
You just unmute if you want to add something.
Sorry about that. So I think that you can just generally see here from these two stories that what it is, it's just a matter of starting to get your information into a digital environment. Get it into a digital environment, begin to shape it, and you'll continue to move it and edit it. And it's just an ongoing process of really just being diligent about putting things together, spending time with it. And I think sometimes when you feel like getting to this writer's block, kind of jumping down to the bottom part here, is sometimes just say things that sound silly, or things that you think others might say about this particular topic, and it will begin to generate, and you'll just begin to generate and flow. And from that comes the editing process. It seems to me, in talking with authors through the years, that there are two groups. There are those who start out with a pretty clear understanding of their outline. And then there's another group that just start with topics, and they talk about those topics, and then they organize those into the outline. And then the writing process is filling into those chapters and topics. And that's the way the book gets done. And it's just a continuous process of editing, adjusting, and many stories about eventually the day comes when you say publish it. And having a deadline in mind is a big important part of that as well. Just get the deadline and get to that, make that happen. And so it becomes a really significant initiative for you, and you've just made it happen. So that's a quick overall of that process. Any questions, comments from anyone else here in the audience? Go ahead there, Lainey.
As soon as I unmute myself. So I agree with what you're saying. There's sort of two ways you start. Zach clearly starts with an outline in his head, but Michael, do you start? I know you start on your phone, which I just think is incredible, but setting that aside, do you start with an outline? Do you know sort of what chapters you want to write, or exactly what topics, or are you a little more of a free flow?
That's a really good question. So I've written one book. This is my first one. So this one that was published was a very different experience to the second book I've just written that will come out next year. So the first book, I had this idea about physical, mental health being related. So I wrote that, And then I put that on Amazon as an ebook. And then I started writing what I thought was the follow-up about like a spiritual side, because I was like, oh, there's more to this. There's 3 parts. Then I was like, there's 4 parts. There's 5. And it was my mum who said, this is all one big thing. So I've got to credit my mum. It wasn't me, you know. And she's like, this is one big thing. So then I repurposed it and went, that is. So that was very organic, almost like accidental, very, you know, romantically created. The second one for leadership was very different. It was like, right, I know I've got some exact material. I know exactly what I want it to be about. And when I wrote my first book, I didn't have a business. I wasn't in the business world. So I've had a very different experience with this now. And I've had a very different approach. So for the second one, I knew exactly what I was going to do. And as I was writing it, I've written like 70% of my third one, because it just comes. So I'd actually say I preferred the second one because it felt a lot more kind of like Zach, a lot more focused. Whereas the first one was almost like a happy accident. I don't think you can fake a second one. And I was like, actually, okay, I've got a process now. So it's a good question. So 2 very contrasting ones. Neither is right, neither is wrong. But that was just my experience.
Very good. Any comments about that? Questions?
I like the happy accident, Michael. Dana, I thought I share my process as well. In terms of writing a book, I usually start with an area that I'm passionate about and also an area that I feel knowledgeable about. And then I think Gloria brought this up last week, you know, being really clear on your why, and then your who. Why are you writing it? What do you hope to convey? And then who would benefit from it or would, you know, want to read it? And I start in that area. And then again, like I say, with the area of expertise or knowledge, subject matter expert. And then for one of my books, the Tea book, I did it more, it's entitled Tea with Strings, and the strings is string music. So I knew that my chapters were gonna be related theme-wise to music. So that was kind of like easy to follow that flow. And then the topics I wanted to include, I lined them up with the themes of the chapter and tried to stick to the number of chapters, not too lengthy, and then that it would flow. And it all sounds easy, but that was years in the making.
Yes, good. You know, I appreciate, Dana, what you just said there about, you know, writing about what you know about. I think what we find as we get ready to write a book, that in the writing process, we learn significantly more than we ever thought we knew. And so that's one of the advantages, I think, for those of us who do coaching, consulting, speaking. The discipline of writing the book will build you emotionally and intellectually into your space pretty significantly. It will just add dramatically. It helps you get to a place of clarity that you wouldn't have otherwise. Doug, we've got your hand up.
I had a question while you're going through that process then in writing. You mentioned about kind of spilling it all out and recognizing that you know more than you thought you did. That may be the case for you, Dwaine, because you know a lot for sure. But I'm wondering, how often do you reconnect to the reader, and how do you visualize the reader? Is it one person or multiple people? Like today, are you writing for this person, and then tomorrow you're writing for that person? How do you manage that?
Well, in my case,
that one. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Zach. Yes.
No, so my book is extremely focused, Doug. As you know, I wrote a book about global sales, and I was looking in my mind. I was thinking about the global sales manager who, you know, is possibly in their 20s or 30s and doesn't have anybody to give them guidance or mentorship. And that was sort of who I was thinking about. And I was thinking, well, what do they need to know? Because there's so much impractical stuff out there about my subject, right? You can get an MBA in international marketing and not have a single hour of anything practical in the process, right? So what I wanted to do was deal with what does this person need to know to achieve their professional goals. And I'll tell you what, like probably the best side effect of this whole thing was that I get constant contacts from people saying, this book really spoke to me. This book really helped me. It's like, my life. It's like, exactly what I was worried about, all these things. And that's just like fantastic. It generates revenue for me because everybody who pays me anything at this point has read my book. But I also just get a large number of people reaching out and saying, this has been so helpful to me. And I love that. That's just fantastic. I went to a trade show a while back and I had 5 or 6 people come up to me because I had my picture on the back cover of the book. I had 5 or 6 people come up to me and go, "You're Zach, aren't you? You wrote the book on global sales." And that's cool, right? Can't beat that.
Michael, you have any comments?
Yeah, I think that's really cool what Zach's saying there. I think I'll give you 2 approaches you could use. If you're sat there thinking, I don't know if I could do it like Zach, or how is there a different way? I'd say don't second guess yourself. Don't think about it too much. First approach, I'll call it the Ed Sheeran approach. If you know Ed Sheeran, English singer-songwriter, it's pretty big. His approach to writing music is he writes for himself. He writes the songs he wants to hear. And because he does that, starts very personally, it resonates with the whole world because he started from himself. So that is one approach you can take. You write the kind of thing like this. The first book I wrote was for me, that I needed to hear it, if that makes sense. The second approach is like Zach's just done there. You could call it like a laser focus approach. So I'd say, try and give a synopsis of what your book's about, in one sentence, and if you had that, you say, so Zach's just like, right, for people doing sales on global level that are feeling disempowered, they need a process, something, Zach can sum it up better than I can. But, there's 2 contrasting approaches. So what I'm trying to say is whichever you use, don't worry about it too much. Focus on the quality material. There's always going to be a market for quality material. I had a quick story. A guy who reached out to me because he knew I was a published author, and he said, "Can you help me?" So of course I can. And he told me his whole marketing plan for his book and how he was going to promote it and his tour. And I was like, sounds great. He's a marketer. And I said, "What have you written?" He said, "I haven't started writing yet." I said, "Okay, maybe write something and then do the second bit second." So those are just 2 approaches you could maybe use. But, I wouldn't, some people paralyze themselves with that question. They don't know who it's for or how it's going to have value. So they don't even try. And Dwaine is a big fan, like you said before, putting the words on the page. You can shape it as you go and go, well, this is actually for global leaders. This is more for younger managers. This one's for B2C. This one's for B2B. So yeah, don't second guess yourself, basically.
And just my actual 2 cents on this is I actually have a number of audiences that I write for in each book. I'm writing about leadership, and particularly executive leadership, because no one fouls up the sales organization any better than executive teams. So, so anyway, and so
I have to agree with that. I always say the biggest problem a VP of sales has is dealing with his stupid CEOs. So there you go.
Well, I'm gonna just say this, but no one does that deliberately. What happens is they just don't have structure. They don't connect. So in my audiences, when I think of my audiences about talking about exceptional executive teams, my first audience is the executive leadership team. My second audience is the executive coach who helps them in their process. The other audience are the individuals who work and connect with that executive team. Another audience that I pay attention to, because in helping get your book out there, there's going to be the academic community that I pay attention to. And so from time to time, I say things that will be, I'm hoping, really attractive to the academic community, without it being academic, but something that they can hang on to with the thought that, there is some, quote, I'm going to call it substance to this. And so thinking of those various audiences, from time to time actually helps me get better clarity for the different audiences. So that's just a personal style that works for me and for my genre of books. Yeah, Werner. Yeah, we need.
Yeah, hi. Hey, just a couple things. Going back to tools, just for what it's worth, I've not written a book, but I guest lecture and I write articles related to what I do. I'm trying to now develop this into something more substantial. But anyway, going to tools, I'm a big fan of Evernote, and I tend to think graphically, so I use Lucidchart. It's a digital whiteboard.
Mhm.
And I throw my thoughts on it in little boxes, and I move the boxes around, which gets me back to the real question here. In some ways, I worry about having too many audiences in a single piece of writing.
Mhm.
You talk about academics. I have those. I have the get rich quick crowd, which I really don't want to attract. I don't really want anything to do with them for lots of reasons, mainly because they don't have any money. I have the incubator crowd that I work with primarily. And when I put these things up on the board, and this is the subject matter I've been doing for quite a while and have lived it for quite a while, I keep getting bogged down into like, oh shit, I better add that, I better add this, I better add that. The thing turns into a giant monster quickly. And I have a hard time really sifting this thing down to the point where I can discard certain things, even to the point of discarding an audience or two that I'm not really writing to, but they unfortunately are part of the ecosystem. And it's where I draw that line, because these outlines I keep doing and these graphical representations to get some flow, they just grow and grow and grow. And I get to the point where, gosh, what do I cut out of here? You know, on the academics, I tend to offend those guys. On the get rich quick crowd, I always intentionally offend those guys. I really don't want them as clients. I don't, it's nothing I want to deal with. It's that group in between. And with the funds I deal with, they're already vetted. Okay, they've already have investment. They've already been vetted by the programs to be accepted. They're there to get the job done. And that's really the focus I'm trying to do. But that's a long way of saying, how do you get to the point where you can condense and condense and condense? And do I just risk leaving stuff out for the audience I don't really care about? Or how is that kind of handled? Because if I go out and intend to write, 10,000 words, next thing I know, I'm at 50,000. It's like, this doesn't work.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just tell you, one of the things that I've done is every book that I've written are written for a 2-hour plane ride. And so it's going to be 20 to 22,000 words, no more. And I try to split up the chapters with a quote, and I use short sentences, and that's the way we just, we actually pare it away. So in my mind, we work through that issue of audience. It's just getting back down to meat and what you think people will read. And so I really think, setting up, whether it's 20, 22,000 words, let that be your book. Someone might have another book that requires 40,000 words, and that's perfectly okay. But I think just limiting the amount of words that you're going to have becomes one of the parameters, and then you just build within that, just like you do in your speaking, Werner. I mean, you speak to folks, you just pare it down to, these are the bullet points that I want them to take away, and that's how you do that.
Good point. Thanks.
Yeah, Zach, your thoughts on that?
So I wrote a really long book, and I basically decided, so from my perspective, I decided the reader I was writing for needed certain information, and I did not feel I would be doing the right service if I didn't include it in the book. That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
Now, a really good sales guru friend of mine who interviewed me for his podcast, he basically said, you know, Zach, you got 5 books here. And so what I've actually done is I have my book, which is 400 pages. And what I've done is I've actually made it into smaller book. I've taken the core book. I've taken 100-page pieces of that book, added 20, 30 pages to it, and made other books. So for instance, there's about 70 pages on trade shows in the book. I added about 30 pages on trade shows, and I wrote a book about trade shows. I have about 50 pages on finding distributors, and I added some material for my vlog, and I'm writing a book on how to identify the right markets to go into, right? So that's sort of the way I addressed this, but I couldn't stop writing. I was just like, this has to be in the book. For this to serve the purpose I want it to, this has to be in the book. That was the way I looked at it anyway.
Yeah, that for you and for your audience and for you, just being true to yourself is a key part of this, I think also. So
exactly. And I don't anticipate anybody is going to read my book for fun, right? And the way I also saw it was I wanted my book to be the type of thing that a person could keep on their shelf and 2 years from now say, oh, this problem came up. I wonder what Zach says about that, right? And use it just to find a solution to a specific problem, sort of like a cookbook type of thing.
mhm.
So Dwaine, I want to add one thing, because I think you're both talking about something that's really important, is think about how the user is going to use your book. Your 2-hour plane ride. I've written a couple of books, and my idea was always that a person who was thinking about learning how to work with Americans had some questions. So it's written with the idea that somebody has a question, they'll go look for an answer, sort of what you're saying. What did Zach say about this? And they'll just grab that part of the book. So I never worried about, the book had a theme and an outline, but I never thought anybody was going to pick it up and read it from cover to cover, that it would be more useful to people if they could dip in, like, I'm going to a trade show, what do I need to know?
Yeah, super. Michael, any thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because it's a real sticking point for a lot of people. So I've got a few things, if any of them are helpful. I think the first thing we've come to quite naturally is, do you want to just do what they call a first draft or a rough cut? In that case, just keep writing, and then edit second. That's personally what I do. I find it so, because writing, editing, and proofreading are not the same. To me, I love writing. Proofreading's okay. What's the name? Quality control, that's death. It's just so painful looking for errors. And if you're flipping from one to the other, it's exhausting, right? So I'd suggest decide whether you want to write and then edit, or do it as you go. I'd say as well, you're concerned about you might have too much content, but that's a good problem to have, right? Social media people talk about having a pillar of content, like Zach was saying, from which you can do multiple things. There's a really good book by Marcus Sheridan called They Ask You Answer. It's a marketing book and just says, like we've been alluding to, your customers have questions, answer them, you become the authority. It's a really good piece of advice. But just to go to what you said, something slightly different, the 20,000 words is fantastic, because that was the minimum amount I was told by my publishers it has to be. So that's your cutoff point, 20,000 words onwards. I found that very helpful for me personally. But also, I don't want to tread on your creative toes. I mean, I've written down here, John Milton, when he wrote Paradise Lost, he created the epic verse. There was no format for the way he wrote, and he created his own. But what most people don't know is he schooled himself and disciplined himself in the existing formats first, got really good at those, and then broke all the rules. So I really like what Dwaine was saying, for me, you might say, right, like, I'm just going to do a 20,000 word version of what I do, just for the experience of it and the discipline of it. And you go, right, I've done that. And that's, great, but I can do so much more now, as opposed to thinking it has to be this thing, don't put pressure on yourself. That's the last thing you should do, but you're in it. It's what I call a good problem to have. It's much better than sitting there going, I haven't got anything to say. you got plenty to say.
Any other comments or questions around this from anyone in the audience? Yes, Werner, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, just a real quick one. I think what I'm hearing here, I know I'm guilty of this. When I do my university work, I just come across as an expert or as an authority. I don't worry about CYA. I don't worry about justifying my position. I already know the questions will come up and I'm prepared for those. This concept of writing a book version of this to me is a little bit odd because I'm not really looking, maybe I should think of this as looking at an audience, but I keep finding myself justifying my conclusions with data, graphics and quotes and all this stuff.
So
To-
can I, oh, I'm sorry, Werner, sorry.
No, go, no, please.
So my copy editor came back to me and she goes, you know, could you soften up your language a little bit? Because you're going to offend some people. And she said, there was another thing. She goes, you say really intelligent, well-educated people do this thing, but it's so stupid. Nobody's going to believe that educated people do this, right? And I said two things. I said, first of all, I go, I'm going to write in the language I speak because the people who are reading this are expecting a sales manager to speak like this. And this is the way I'm going to speak, right? And then the second thing was so sort of going back to what Dwaine said a minute ago, if you are a VP of sales, you are sort of surrounded by idiots your whole life. And that's my life, right? And what I basically say to people is, if you want to survive, your job is to keep the idiot who's your boss from screwing with the people who work with you. That's your job. If you don't like it, become a librarian or something, right? But like, if you want to be a sales VP, that's your job. And so it can be a little bit I'm sure there are a lot of CEOs who have read my book and like, huh, this doesn't make any sense. I think I'm pretty bright. But that said, you know, this is sort of where we are, right? So that's the way I wrote my book. And I think to be true to your voice, in my opinion, depending on what you're writing, mine is not going to be a bestseller. It's a bestseller in its very, very tiny specific category. But, you know, it's not going to be something that people buy to read on an airplane to feel good about themselves, right? On the other hand, they're going to read it and generate more money, which is what I wrote it for. So.
Yeah, I have no doubt I'll offend a lot of people. I'm direct. I take it from the position of the investor and as a board member, and I don't dance around. And I don't have a problem saying, you know, that is going nowhere unless you change this and this, or you have no chance, or no one's going to give you the money. I mean, those are absolutes in my world and in my way of thinking, but I keep on trying to beef those up with all the reasons why. And maybe I should just stop that and just say, this is what it is.
So here's my why. I start off, and I didn't like doing this. I really thought about this. I'll tell you my point of it. I started off by saying, here's the deal. I have grown 4 businesses by over 1,000%, one time by 4,000%. Right? I have like, you know, whatever, 7 people who have reported to me have gone on to be CEOs and 20 some have gone on to be VPs, right? So what I'm talking about, you might not agree with what I'm saying, but if you don't, you're wrong, because unless you've done, if you've grown 4 businesses by 1,000%, sure, we can talk. If you haven't, shut up and listen, basically, right? That was my way of looking at it. And that's sort of the way I wrote. Now you can say something similar, right? Depending on how offensive you want to be. But I said a couple of times, I said, if you screw you are going to want to screw your distributors. Your boss is going to want you to screw your distributors. If you do, get out of this business because you are dead in this business. People will be talking about this 25 years from now. So I cannot overstress, you can't do this. And I said that over and over again. And my copy editor was like, well, could you say it in a more polite way? And I said, no. This is like saying to your kids, don't touch the stove, right? You want to touch the stove, don't touch the stove, right? Anyway, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's great.
That's very helpful. Yeah. Erica, please.
Thank you. So my question for all of you is twofold. First part is, did any of you start blogging initially to allow the free flow of information? And the second part is, whether you did that or not, did you find that after the first book came, it was a much more facilitated process afterwards?
Any comments, Michael?
I can comment, but I spoke a lot. Mike, you want to take that?
Sure, thank you. Yeah, great question, Erica. The first for me is I do write blogs and I do blogs, but my process was it was something that I did through CBT therapy. So in CBT therapy, they say write things regularly that you feel good about or that you're grateful for, 3 things every day. And that discipline of doing that, I still do that to this day. And I've done that for like 5 years. So even though that's very private, it's not for anybody, nobody sees it, that gets the discipline of the writing down. And I know for a lot of people, that's what blogging is. But I don't know about you, but if I'm going to put a blog out, it needs to be exceptional. It needs to be really, really good. So the reason I'm saying that is that kind of just little practice got me used to it, so that when it came to writing a book, it wasn't so much of a leap. Now, for some people, blogging is like that because they're a regular blogger and they can do that. What I'd say is any practice of writing that you're currently engaged in is fantastic. Whatever it is, write is right. That was one thing I wanted to say at some point. I'm glad I got the chance to say it. Write is right. If you write, you're a writer. Congratulations, you get the certificate. So however, and then, so having said that, with my second book, because you asked about, is it flowing? Does it come? 100%. Like, Zach will back me up on this. You start writing, you're like, well, I've done that. I can write a book on that, and I can that. It does, because I say, like, you only need to have done it once, because then you've got a reference point, and you say, well, the first time I did this, and now I'm going to do this, and it just flows. Like, and I wrote some blogs last year in lockdown. I wrote 9 blogs in 9 weeks because I just had to get it out. And that resulted actually in business and sales and a better relationship, because one of my clients read every single one and said, we need to talk. So there was a financial gain there as well. But again, it's just that regular practice, and separating it out from kind of thinking, oh, this is something that needs to be read by somebody, to, no, this is just something I'm doing, kind of thing. Does that answer your question?
Yes, very well. Thank you.
And
Zach,
I had
do you
a
wanna add to it?
vlog. I had a vlog for 2 years before I started writing the book. And to be really frank, like, before I started, I sort of considered whether I wanted to do a book or a vlog. And then I decided to do the vlog. I didn't get the level of traction I wanted from the vlog. And then I decided to do the book. And I really went back, like, when I just, at that point, I really did a lot of thinking, because I was reading, and it was, it's like, well, traditionally it would say, write the book, but today, in today's world, a vlog is more effective than a book. And I found that the vlog did not give me the traction or the gravitas maybe of a book, right?
Yep.
My book is being used in universities, right? Nobody in the university is going to open up a 3-minute video of me chatting about a sales issue, right? So that's been very helpful. That's my position on it, right? But yeah, I started out with a vlog.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Erica, any other comments about that? I'm just curious as to kind of where you are in your process.
It's interesting, because I will just think and write things. I have poetry put away. I wrote a children's book and never did anything with it. But anyway, there's one topic that I'm quite passionate about that I want to start writing about. And to Zach's point about vlogging, I was deciding, should I start blogging just to, remove mental blocks and just allow myself to free flow and think. And I was just deciding between vlogging and blogging. And I felt that the video aspect would take away from my thought process. So I decided that blogging might be better. But then I didn't want to get so wrapped up in that to prevent me from just getting out my thoughts, because they're right there. I'll jot down notes in the middle of the night sometimes or early morning to this one subject matter that I want to write about. So that's where I am.
Yeah, so you're in your own journey. And so getting to the place where you say, I will deliver this on this specific day, that's when you will get your book out.
That's it. And I'm really appreciating everyone's comments because I need to, it's a yearning. It has to come out. It's there. And I overthink sometimes. So I need to remove that block of overthinking and just let it out.
Hey, welcome to the club, Erica.
Thanks, Dana.
When I was dealing with editing and finishing up my book, I posted on social media and I said, if you see me after a certain day, ask me how my book is going. And if I can't tell you that I've sent it to the publisher, please hit me in the head with a stick. And I put that out and I just stood by it. I was like, I got to be ready for this. I wanted to be held accountable by everybody I knew. And I'd done a similar thing when I ran a marathon a few years ago. So sometimes you just got to throw it out there and make sure that you're going to be held accountable so that, you know, the mobs will keep you in control.
I like it. I do like that. Thank you.
I wanted to add something about blogging too, if that's okay, Dwaine. We've got a minute for that.
Sure.
So Erica, just speaking to your question on that, I blog, I think more for like a therapeutic place to put the information. And it turns out it serves as a reference and a source that's already documented that I can always go back to if I want to incorporate any aspects of what I felt inspired at the time. So it's helpful. But I do think about the audience in terms of how when I'm writing it, but I want it to flow and who would benefit from me sharing it. But I don't let that hinder me on just being free on what I want to express, but I go back and look it over before I publish it. So blogging is just a good place to flow in writing for my things I view or experience, and I feel that might be somebody else may want to know the same and how you work through it and what's the lesson learned. Yeah.
I like that, Dana. Thank you. That was my thought behind it. I think it's a creative way, you know, or it's an outlet for you to be creative and I think from that other ideas are born or comments might spark something additional. So
you're right. And I think the vlog for me, I've never done it for like that same purpose, but because I'm such a stickler for things, I think that would slow me down because I was like, oh no, the lighting's not right. Oh, whereas blogging, you just write.
Precisely, exactly what I was thinking. Exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And I know we still have a little bit of time here, but
if I can go for a minute,
please.
I really relate, Michael, I really relate to what you said in the beginning, and it is basically kind of just do it. And this summer, when all of his authors got together, one of the main things we shared was the inspiration for us to want to even author a book in the first place. So I won't go there because I already shared that. But I do want to talk about the process. And certainly when I made the decision to write a book, my first book, it was due to things that happened. And I didn't quite know how to go about it. So I read books on how to write a book. I didn't like what they said. I didn't agree with them necessarily. And I thought, that's not how I want to do it. I found myself struggling with what they say to do and how to go about it. I really struggled with that. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to do my own thing here. So Michael, that's what I'm doing. And that's how I wrote my first book. So I thought, okay, what do I want to do here? Well, first of all, at that particular point, I had done seminars and workshops and coaching and everything on my area of expertise. And so during that process, I'd written a lot of workbooks, a lot of manuals, a lot of handouts and all that. And I thought, you know what, it's already written. I love cut and paste. Because with computer work, you can just cut something out of something you've already written and you can paste it there. And I thought, oh, this is great, but I'm also about the sequence. So I had to stop and think about, for my area of expertise, people need to know this so they can do this better, so they can do this better, so they can do this better. So I had to really capture that sequence. So when I created my chapters and my sub-chapters, I tried to do it in that sequence. So I went back to workbooks, handbooks, flyers, anything that I had written previously, even blogs, and I cut out stuff that fit in that particular mode, that particular sequence. The risk is repetitiveness. I will tell you that right away, because you might paste the same thing in 2 or 3 different places because it has a fit in all those places. So you have to go back and grab that. But I wanted my books to be a resource because as I watch people, I wanted to tell you what you didn't know. And I also wanted to help you with what you were taking for granted. A lot of people take for granted what they know, but they really don't know it as well as they need to know it. Does that make sense? Hope that makes sense. And that's what I was trying to do. And I also used observation. I started going to networking events and different things, and I would actually pull back and I would stay in the background and I would watch how people interacted. So it's one thing for me to write about how you should interact, the best way to go about it. But it's another thing to watch people do it. And I watched the people who were real smooth and really good, the Doug Runke's out there. And then I watched the people who really looked awkward. And I thought, oh, they just killed that moment with that awkwardness. And sometimes I would approach them and I would talk to them and I would try to get information as to, what happened here, what could make it better. Then I'd go back to my computer in the sequence that I'm writing, and I try to find a way to make that better. So it was all about writing a resource book. And one of the things, and I don't know if all of you authors do this or not, but one of the things that was huge for me was have an index. I've noticed when I go to bookstores today, a lot of books don't have index. And I was all about, I want you to find what you need to know fast. I don't want you to have to go through all these chapters and reading. Just go to the index, look up that topic, and then go to that page. Now you've got what you need to know now. That was kind of my attitude through my writing process. And that's how I wrote.
Super. Any other comments about that? Yeah, really, really very helpful things today. And it's amazing to when you listen to this, there's a lot of variety in terms of style, processes, ways of thinking. And so I think if I think of 2 words that come to mind is, first of all, in the writing process, you get to clarity of your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And getting that to clarity is really a key piece. And like you, Werner, most of my experiences grew out of speaking to people, but also in Zach's experience, I've been building and developing companies for a few decades, global companies. And out of that experience, and then the last few years working with entrepreneurs who are trying to grow businesses, I was writing to help those folks get better clarity and get better definition, and then get to a place of being deliberate. And that next step of being deliberate is where we go get these things done. And so it's just really exciting to hear this information today and to know that this is being recorded, and we'll get others down the road who will get to hear this. And really your comments today have just been spectacular, and the engagement's very, very much appreciated. And you can just see why I'm a huge fan of our global chamber community. And we just keep building and developing and helping one another. And gosh, the openness here today, the sharing, we just have to be really excited and thankful for that. And so now next week, it's going to be the 3rd session, and it's going to be about creating a writing community. Some of that has been touched on today, where we have audiences. I particularly appreciated Michael saying, my mother helped me get the big perspective. I have had that with my wife of 55 years. From time to time, she gets to the brilliant simplicity, clarity, while I'm completely muddled in every way. And so this community and having a group of people with whom you're sharing your thinking, you're sharing your writing, getting feedback, you turn this into a community project. And at the end of the day, your name is on the book. But when you write the acknowledgements, as I look at the acknowledgements in books, I realize those are deeply sincere acknowledgements. Every one of those people that get mentioned are really valuable to the process. So anyway, next week should be very good. We have one of the authors for next week is Lon Safko. And Lon is just one of the most enjoyable, prolific writers, teachers, inventors that you're ever going to meet, and so forth. And Michael Tucker, I think, is just one of the young superstars of this whole world of, leadership, executive coaching, and you're just going to appreciate him immensely. And then we have, as the moderator next week, is this Lainey Denslow, and being the president of the Universal Lainey Denslow Fan Club is one of the important parts of my life, is getting to be her president of her fan club. So anyway, it's going to be a great week next week. It's been marvelous this week. And so we still have a couple minutes left. If anyone has any final comments, we are eager to hear them. Any other thoughts? Gloria? I forgot to mention again that this Gloria lady has, this has been her inspiration to put all this in place. So we have to really be appreciative of Gloria putting all this together. And she sends me little reminders, and I appreciate every one of them. And so you just keep reminding us and guiding us along the way here, Gloria.
Thank you.
Lainey, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been here today for sharing your questions and your ideas and what you're thinking about, and hope to see all of you next week.
Yes.
So please stay in touch and please continue with us.
Yes. And Doug and Cesar, you two are marvelous and wonderful. Thank you for just making this happen each time. You know, we're very, very thankful for our whole community and everything that you've built. Cesar, thank you. Thank you. Okay, I guess we can close off now, and thank you all. And I'm going to treasure looking through this and listening to this again with all of you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.